In many religions of the world, there is such a thing as monasticism. Believers who want to devote themselves to the service of the Almighty renounce worldly life and go to live in a monastery. Such a life implies the rejection of all pleasures and temptations that can distract from righteous deeds. However, despite the presence of such great religious zeal, people who have taken the vow of monasticism still remain human beings. Therefore, nothing human is alien to them. So how do they deal with natural attraction to the opposite sex? If you don't know how to own your desires, then subscribe to our channel and express your opinion in the comments.
Вот скажи, разве у тебя не бывают такие моменты, когда плоть восстает и требует своего? Эти импульсы трудно подавлять в себе.
Let's start with a brief introduction so that you understand the essence of monasticism. It is worth noting that the term monk itself takes its origin from the Greek word meaning one, a single. Therefore, people having taken a vow of monasticism are obliged to live in hermitage, isolated from the laity. Historians believe that monasticism originated precisely in the East, from where it then spread to the West. Thus, the first monk was the Egyptian Antony the Great, who is also known as Saint Anthony. He became a hermit, gradually moving to the desert area. In this connection, he was called a hermit. Other monks lived in caves, tombs, abandoned buildings. Over time, there were more and more such hermits, and monasticism gained popularity among Christians. What are these people doing to overcome natural human desires? In general, the ways of overcoming their desires in men and women practically do not differ.
Что это означает?
Это схима. Тут написано: «Семь и смерть предстоит, суда Твоего, Господи, боюся». Это гроб.
А для чего нужна эта надпись?
If we talk purely about nuns, then in the Middle Ages they were not particularly favored if it suddenly turned out that one of the novices lacked faith. In order to eradicate all obscene thoughts, the mentors assigned her the dirtiest and most difficult work. Such a novice cleaned the premises in which her sisters lived, was engaged in cooking, and looked after the cattle. Fatigue distracted her and prevented her from concentrating on her vicious desires. In case of special disobedience, chains were put on the nun. These are forged chains that caused pain when worn. Such torment was supposed to banish from the heart of the disobedient nun any thoughts about the opposite sex. In addition, the nuns have always lived apart from the laity, which in principle excluded the possibility of even formal communication with men. Of course, modern nuns' ways of dealing with their own bodies are not so radical. However, hard work is still one of the most effective methods. Also, the nuns do not have any connection with the outside world, be it the internet or a smartphone. They are deprived of the opportunity to adorn themselves in any way, which also affects their way of thinking. And of course, all this is not complete without numerous prayers that help develop complete humility and renunciation of the desires of the flesh. Let's now move on to male monks and see how they deal with carnal lusts. The men who live in the monastery do not have relationships with women. They made a decision to renounce worldly affairs, humble their flesh, and consecrate all their affairs to God. However, many do not understand how people can voluntarily refuse to satisfy natural human needs. Some wonder if this is even possible, and is it easy for monks? What do they do to subdue their flesh? And also, what is it for? This is called celibacy. Celibacy is a way of life of a person who has refused marriage. Despite the fact that the Bible does not condemn the creation of a family, in many Christian religions of the world, there is such a concept. Moreover, celibacy can be both voluntary and mandatory. If we talk about the Orthodox Church, its teachings do not oppose marriage. In fact, it is possible even for priests. but there are some nuances.
Bread from the Last Supper, milk from the Virgin's breast, a thorn that pierced Christ's brow on Calvary. And here in Wittenberg we have the pick of...
Only ministers, ordained deacons or priests can start a family. For the rest, there is no such opportunity, including monks. Moreover, all Orthodox, endowed with clergy, are divided into whites and blacks, that is secular and regular clergy. It is the latter who are unmarried and usually serve in the monastery. Subsequently, it is the representatives of the black clergy who have the right to receive the highest degree of clergy. Thus, in the Orthodox Church, only celibate monks are allowed to grow up to the highest degree of priesthood. However, many men go to the monastery and agree to celibacy not for this reason. It is believed that people who have renounced all blessings, joys, and desires become closer to the Almighty, unlike the laity. Between them and the Lord there is no barrier in the form of caring for a wife and children. Therefore, the meaning of celibacy for them lies in the opportunity to devote all their time to prayers and reflections on the essence of God. Orthodox monks believe that only such a way of life will help them grow spiritually. However, it is difficult to argue with nature, and the body is not so loyal to the teachings of the Church. So how do monks deal with this?
А вы, отец мой, зло не пугает вас? У сатаны нет власти над вами.
The ancient monks treated themselves very radically. They went to a monastery and took tonsure. They humbled their flesh with a strict fasting. Sometimes they did not eat anything and did not sleep for days. When this did not help, they could go into caves and pray there day and night. Sometimes they even took off their clothes and put heavy chains on their hands. In this way they pacified their desire with pain. But if this did not help, they could also dig a hole and fill themselves with earth up to their chests and stand up like that for several days. Among religious people who took a vow of celibacy, a certain impulse of self-torture often slipped through. So the monks who lived during the Middle Ages, feeling the strongest attraction of the flesh, began to beat themselves with a whip. Not knowing that these desires are quite natural for a healthy male body, believers went to extreme measures in order to knock out the temptations of the evil one from themselves. And how do modern ministers of monasteries cope with the desires of the flesh? First of all, it should be understood that in principle, not every person is capable of such a life. Some monks still leave the walls of the monastery, unable to withstand the strict rules. However, everyone who agrees to this way of life understands what restrictions it imposes. Therefore, the future novice must consciously make this decision. To abstain, the monks spend a lot of time in prayer and exhausting work. They read the special sayings of the elders about the struggle of the flesh and strive to subdue desires in themselves with the help of the power of thought. The servants of the monastery deliberately underestimate the importance of bodily pleasures, contrasting them with serving God without distractions. This is facilitated by the isolation of believing men from women's society and the absence of any connection with the outside world. Some monks become so engrossed with the life in the monastery that over time they get used to these restrictions. The body of some adapts, and the attraction disappears completely. There is an opinion that such abstinence can bring some negative consequences for human health. However, there are many people who did not take a vow of celibacy, but live so because of the prevailing circumstances or because of their own decision. Well, everyone chooses for himself what he considers more important and what he is willing to sacrifice in order to achieve his goal.
What do you want?
Well, this is where we end this topic. We hope you found some wisdom for yourself in this video. Stay tuned for our latest releases and see you soon.